Hello, everybody, and welcome to this latest in the Values Jam guest session series. And Bill, brilliant to have you here. And to start with, please introduce yourself to people that are watching and listening this.
Okay, well, thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure to be your guest. I'm Bill Forster. I live in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I have a company called CEO Zones, which is a private sanctuary community for CEOs of billion and larger organizations.
Okay, and I'm guessing that you must be pretty busy at this time because CEOs are having a rough ride at the moment, right?
Well, I don't know that I'm busy, but our community, our sanctuary is very busy around petroleum prices, supply chain prices, food prices, packaging prices. Uh, Plus, you're kind of coming out of the first quarter, you're looking at third quarter earnings and all of those different things. So, yes, it's a beehive in the sanctuary. I'll say that, yes.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that as well, I know from reading about your work and your career, you're a very experienced business leader. And I sometimes think back to when I was in the corporate world and everything was pretty stable. And so when it came to budget planning time, for instance,
Right.
all it involved really was a negotiation between the unit guy and the head office guy. And it was, you know, we think you can deliver 7% increase. And the unit guy saying, oh, no, I think it's going to be more like 4.5. And then you just arrive at somewhere in the middle and everybody's happy and on you go. Whereas now, but the backstory or the history is absolutely zero indicator of what's going to happen in the future, it seems. So it's a different ball game, right?
Yeah, very, very much so. I would say our normal or typical member predictive revenue, things like that, you have a baseline that maybe you feel 80% comfortable with, speaking in general about certain businesses or business lines. But then when you have world disruption, geopolitical changes, regime changes, supply chain changes, or two of our members are going through a small company being a multi-billion dollar company, merging with a larger triple digit billion dollar company, but yet the small company ends up with all of its leadership team in place and the large company is leaving. And that might be in your newspaper in your house, by the way. It's one of your side of the pond companies. But in any event, all the supply chain, all of the tools that back in the 70s, since I'm old, I'm a great grandfather. Back in the 70s, it used to take you, maybe a different analogy would be think about when people used to get on a ship and it took them a month to get somewhere and they couldn't get daily mail and they couldn't do all the things they could think and read and be refreshed from. Now, I would say the analogy of that 30-day travel is about 6 minutes. The world has changed
Yeah.
and data is in your hands. And AI tools are now making the data, from what I can see, very accurate and reliable if you train them properly and keep them in the right fence. So I am pro AI, but in a useful, productive, controlled way. It's kind
Mhm.
of like when the internet first came out, people said, "Oh, this is horrible." Well,
Yeah.
it's horrible if you use it for horrible things, and it can be very good if you use it for good things. Same thing with AI. So anyway, I'm a babbler. Sorry about that, Alan, but that,
No,
that
no,
would be
no.
my immediate response. So
Well, that's the beauty of Values Jam. So it's based on the concept of a music jam. So in a music jam, nobody says, "Hey, Bill, you've only got three strings on your guitar." They just welcome you in, right? And then nobody tells you what you've got to play. And if somebody stumbles, nobody calls a halt to proceedings and conducts an inquisition. You just embrace it. And when we were creating this game, we thought, wouldn't it be beautiful if conversations were a bit more like that rather than staged with an agenda trying to get to a certain point? So I'm babbling and burbling is fine.
well, that's
So,
Bill.
well, we're going to choose a card now. So these are the Values Jam card deck. I'm going to just shuffle them while you think of how many piles of these cards you'd like me to make in front of me.
So we're in Vegas for the moment. Okay, I will have three piles.
Three piles. Okay, they're
Yeah.
different sizes, and I've
So
got
one of the
pile.
values is I totally trust you because I can't see a thing you're doing. I don't know if there's
No,
six
you can't.
cards or
That's
two
true.
cards.
That's true. Wouldn't it be spooky if
Okay.
trust came up now? Eh?
Oh my goodness.
So I've got pile one on my left and pile
Yep.
three on my right. So which
Okay.
number pile would you like?
Oh, we'll take your right since I'm right-handed. Okay.
Number three.
Three.
Okay.
Yep.
And now I'll tell you how many cards we've got here. We've got 10, 13, 16,
Phew.
19, 20, 24 cards. So a number between 1 and 24.
18.
18. So I'll work from the
Mhm.
back. 23, 22, 21, 2019. Oh my goodness, I don't believe this. Have you set this up?
But I set it up. Huh.
Do you know anything
Okay.
about that?
Well, sometimes, yes. I can tell you how not to do it, which the opposite of that would be maybe you could do it. So yeah, we'll try.
Well, let's start with this then. So, simple question, but maybe
Yeah.
not so simple actually to answer. What does entrepreneurship mean, and what does it look, feel, and sound like?
All right. So remember, I'm a great grandpa, so you might have to remind me the second or third
Yeah,
question.
that's fine.
But what it means to me
Yep.
is someone who has a passion to go out and create a service that is going to bring a level of excellence in what they do to serve others, and how do they cause multiple people to help other people. So to me, they're kind of putting something together where there's a need and there is a single person who has that vision or that calling or that purpose, and they're going to go create it
Okay.
with a
And
positive cash flow. I'll throw that out there. Yeah.
yeah, well, I'm glad that you did that last bit because, and this might be my bias, so let me check it with you because it's my impression that the word entrepreneurship is largely associated with making money these days. Whereas what you just described doesn't start with money. Money is the bright byproduct of your passion
Well,
and
it's
your
people
ability to
before
help.
profits, always.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
yeah.
do, do you sense that entrepreneurship is a bit focused too much on finance when we talk about it? Or do you think that your definition is widely bought into?
So people before profits should be widely bought into. I do not believe, from my perspective, in my community, if you will, it is understood as people before profits. In our culture, thinking of what I call CEO, culture, execution, optimization is what CEO stands for. You do need to put the people first. And I don't care what kind of business you are in. Microsoft is in the people business. I mean, Chick-fil-A, one of my dear, dear company friends, they're in the people business. They serve people. Now they sell billions of dollars of chicken, but they are in the people business, both internally and externally. So back to your fifth question there, I'll say, yes, I see many people who think it's only about making money, or they have the mindset, if I make money, then I can be nice. Doesn't work that way. You got to be kind, to use a common word between us. You got to be kind and you've got to have serve a need, and the profits will follow. And entrepreneurs sometimes are living on what they'll call bootstrap or venture capital money or whatever it might be, mom and dad's money until they get it up and running. It's still about people first, or they'll never get to the profit. So that's my personal take on that. And that
Mm.
doesn't, I don't care if you're doing a dollar or you're doing 200 billion. Uh, it's about the people.
Yeah, and probably the bigger you get, the harder it is to maintain that approach because you're reliant on so many more people getting it and being able to execute the same thing, right?
Well, that to me comes back to culture. If you
Yeah,
build it from the very first person through, it gets easier, not harder. because now you have multiple people out there with the same passion, the same values, the same drive of why. Why are we taking care of our people? Why are we taking care of the community? Why are we taking care of our state? Why are we taking care of our country? It all started with that one person and goes out from there. So
Yeah,
if done properly, those are the ones that are going to stay. Those are the ones that Jim Collins would say are good to great or built to
great.
last, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you're touching on a little bit of what Simon Sinek talks about there about the why, right? Because
Sure.
he covers how so many leaders in business are obsessed with the what and just telling people what to do. And if you forget the why and the how, then you haven't got the hearts and minds engaged, and eventually it's going to fall over.
Well, if he were here, I'd say it starts with the who.
Okay.
Who am I and who are we? And now what's our why?
Yeah.
And we have had that indirect conversation through his mutual friend Gary Ridge, who's one of our content partners, the CEO, chairman
Right.
now of WD-40, right?
WD. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what about there was the metaphor part of the question. So when you think of the word entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
what images come to mind? What feelings come to mind? And what sounds come to mind?
Sounds a lot of crying in the middle of the night. Uh, uh, feelings come to mind. So it's not for the faint of heart
Yeah.
to be an entrepreneur. You have to be kind, relentless, uh, extremely diligent. And I would say if there's an entrepreneur or CEO out there that isn't reading a chapter of Proverbs every day, they're not gonna make it. And I don't care what their size is either, whether they're brand new this month or 200 billion. I'll pick on our friends at Alphabet, right? So uh, you got to be diligent. You got to have the right heart for people. And if you're just out there just to make money, you will make bad decisions. Just gonna happen that way. So it's all about humans, no matter whatever we're doing, right? However we're
Yeah.
serving, whoever we're serving. I keep coming back to it's about people. But the sound would be that 2 o'clock you wake up in the morning with a cry in your voice or a tear in my voice saying, how am I going to make payroll? Or how should we have done this merger? Or do we buy this company? Do we build it? Those are all things that they're fun and exciting looking back, but in the moment, they can be very stressful. But
Mm.
that's why you would read that proverb a day, because that's the book that out of the 66 of the book, that one book would be the book that is now, right? Genesis was the beginning, Proverbs is now, and Revelation is later. So
Yeah.
that's how I feel about it. So
Mm.
might have just scared some of your watchers and listeners away, but to me,
I don't think
that's how
I,
you
I,
build a multi-billion-dollar corporation is starting right there. So
I don't think you will have scared them away at all. And just listening to you, I'm thinking, and this is a bit weird, but I've learned that by doing these values jams just to go with it. So what popped into my head as an image was a child with a lemonade stand on a
mhm.
hot day selling, you know, plastic
Yep.
cups of lemonade and making some money and maybe doing that because they wanted to buy their mum a box of chocolates or whatever it is.
Yep.
And so that for me really sums up entrepreneurship, just using or creating a values driven model, concept and model, and
Mhm.
then being able to put it into operation and making it works. And like you said earlier, the byproduct is some money. And then listening to your words, different words to yours came to my mind about entrepreneurship in terms of feelings. So I think there's something about calculated risk. So not wild risk, but considered risk. Nonetheless, risk. And if you don't take the risk, you're not going to get the reward, right?
Mhm.
Um, responsibility, yes, but the bigger word for me is privilege. So that waking up in the morning at 2 o'clock, I, I guess I'm not really an entrepreneur, but I think if I was, I would be thinking, those employees depend on the success of this organization and their
Mm.
families do, and that's why we need to make this thing go. And then in terms of sounds, I'm thinking of hearing compliments actually. They're great. They're just so much better than the rest. That's how I like to think of the stuff that I get involved in, not just being a little bit better than everybody else, but being, differently better.
Mhm.
Um, okay, so we've kind of opened up there into the world of entrepreneurship, and the next question is, where have you noticed a lack of entrepreneurship?
A lack. See, I don't go around looking for lack to kind of what you just made me another sound for an entrepreneur is celebrating that next big deal or
Yeah,
taking the employee of the day out for
yeah,
dinner or giving them a gift card. Those are the real encouraging things, which both of us are old enough to I'm a lot older, but both of us are old enough to know that you know who needs encouragement. You know how to tell who needs encouragement? They're
yeah,
still breathing. They're still breathing. They need encouragement. There's a battle going on somewhere between their ears or their heart that they still need encouraged for. So that was another sound, I guess, out there. But for the right at the moment, the way I was thinking about it, it was that you've got your risks, you've got all your models, and you're in that moment where you're just I don't know, the old-fashioned water pump. You primed it, but the gusher didn't come out yet, right? And you're pumping like crazy and you're not seeing it flow yet. So
yeah.
uh, that
And
can happen. Yeah.
I'm glad you talked about encouragement there because I still think of recognition and appreciation as being the best investment that a leader can make
Mhm.
because you get such a brilliant return on that investment. And I'd like to share with you a story. I was running a hotel and country club property, and it was our 10th birthday as a hotel property. And so I contacted all of my colleagues around the world, explaining that it was our 10th birthday celebration that we were going to enjoy at the annual Christmas party for the employees, and invited them to donate free stays at their properties. And we got loads. It was great. So we couldn't afford to fly people there, but we were giving away weekends and week-long stays in different places around the world. Around 90 that we gave out on this evening.
Wow.
Now, we also had an Employee of the Year scheme, and we had a proper, robust process to select these people, and we announced the winner of the year at the annual party. And because of receiving all of these free stays, we decided that year that the prize for the Employee of the Year would be a week in LA, a week in Las Vegas, and a week in Hawaii. And we did pay for the flights for that.
Okay.
And the guy that was the winner, a brilliant man called Stephen, who was the guy that showed guests to their bedroom and carried their luggage and got their cars and all of this sort of stuff. And I'll never forget this because when he came forward to collect it, he was crying, just streaming with tears. And he said, I don't even know where Hawaii is. It was a beautiful moment, beautiful
That's
moment.
that's a good one.
Now,
Excellent.
you I'm wondering if you've had time to process that. I know you don't look for lack of entrepreneurship, but where do you think then could benefit from more sense of entrepreneurship? What environments come to mind there?
Well, cancer research comes to mind for one.
Okay.
Just we got to solve that. And I have a dear friend that's his passion. That's the stage of life he's in, and he's been very blessed and giving back in that way. And there's just not a lot. It's big pharma trying to control that, and we need a scientist somewhere in the world to team up with another scientist and be funded and not look at it as, oh, gee, we got to make cash flow $100 million in the first 9 months, or we won't get investors to get to the $300 million we need, whatever the numbers are, and come back to the real purpose. And again, it's about people before the profits, and then the profits will flow. And yeah, the cancer drug may not be $10,000 a month. Maybe it's only supposed to be $1 a month if you did it right, right? And those are the kind of things I think there's a lack in that type of process and world where uh, just like when I have some friends whose children become doctors, things like that, they had a something an experience when they were younger and they said, I want to be this or I want to be that, or they went through some struggle and through that struggle they wanted to help others. I don't see enough of that in cancer research. Now maybe I'm living in a cloud. I don't know, but I don't see
Well,
enough of it.
it's
Kind of like the
interesting.
weight loss drug.
Oh,
Everybody got behind that, right? So
yeah,
why not do something a little bit more important? Um, not
totally
that
agree.
not that a fat old man like me isn't a problem, but that is something that hits everybody in every age. And the fat part, I can mentally change my mind and change that, right? Cancer,
Yeah.
I can't change my mind and change it. I can fight it and I can have hope, but let's put an end to that, I guess would be kind of right out there for me.
Yeah, well, two things you made me think of. I wrote a paper with a professor at Concordia University in Canada around the pharmaceutical industry, and we categorized them according to their values and came up with the normal quadrant of four different groups. But it was really interesting to look at companies like Johnson Johnson and think about where they started from, which was all for the
Mhm.
right reasons.
Yep.
And then over time, they've somehow just become this money making machine and they seem to have forgotten what they started out to do. Um, and then the other thing you're talking about treating fat old men, I'll put myself in that category as well. Could lose a few pounds versus cancer. It's like why is it that space tourism is more attractive than solving cancer?
And the billions of dollars that you could have solved cancer with. Yes. Uh, well, we're all humans, so we all have the choice. Every
Yeah,
breath, we got a choice to go to the right, go to the left, or go down the middle. So those are choices people make. But uh, I'm sure there's other areas where we need more entrepreneurship, but that one would be on my mind.
yeah, I think it's a good one. And actually, I'm wondering. I think you know that we've got a kindness summit coming up in Florida in May, and one of the principles of that is not to try to be another movement or community, but instead to create a conducive environment for all of the existing players to connect with each other, collaborate together, and create more positive impact together. And
Yeah.
so I'm imagining if you could create a place in the pharma world where there was that sort of, we're not fighting to be better than you. Let's
Right.
get together and sort this thing out.
And put the strengths and strengths and figure out the weaknesses. And one of you's got that strength, one of you's got that weakness, and go make it happen. Absolutely. Which I'm glad you and Kevin and Greg are going to go down there and do that because three very powerful, passionate guys can have three good teams coming together can get one better result. That's for sure.
Absolutely, for sure. And you're making me think now because we've started to progress our thinking in a few sectors. So, for instance, the world of film, alongside probably music and sport, film has the biggest impact on society and biggest influence on society.
Mhm.
So, why can't the leading players in that industry say, we're going to put 1% of our profits to one side and we're going to do good with it as an industry?
Mhm.
And imagine if the music industry, which could sure do with a better reputation, and sport maybe as well. Why couldn't they do the same? Why couldn't pharma join in and create a fund where they say our industry is going to sort out cancer for the world? How emboldening would that be for an industry, and what sort of benefit would it create in terms of employee retention and attraction, people wanting to go into that industry sector rather than some others? And like you say, all it is at the end of the day is people senior enough with responsibility being able to make that choice.
Mhm. Totally agree. Totally agree. But it also starts in the home, right? You can't go out and do something corporately unless you got it working at home. One of our content partners, Randy Gravitt, wrote the book "Winning Begins at Home,"
Right.
uh, and it's sold to corporate executive teams. But the last thing you want to do is go out and create the next greatest business, take care of your team, your organization, and not have somebody to go home to, right?
For
Uh,
sure.
or go home to the wrong person is even worse, but not have somebody to go home to. Um, so those types of values are near and dear to me and how we try to help people throughout their whole life, right? It's not just about EBITDA lift and it's not just about those type of things. It's about the whole package with us. So,
And what you've just described, I can relate to this because I remember a guy that I worked with, and we were in a meeting, and he was telling me that he had not been able to attend his child's sports day at school because of
mm,
this important meeting that we were having. And I was curious, so I was like, well, why did you not choose to go there rather than be here? And the answer was all about because this job enables us to have a certain lifestyle, and we're going to be able to be comfortable in our retirement and all of this. But is that really worth missing your child growing up for?
well, I can't say I did it right all the time.
Yeah,
But I was blessed to have a wife that raised some good kids. So, yeah.
yeah. Now in Values Jam,
Yeah.
Bill, there's a chance for you to ask your own question about entrepreneurship. And then, if you have the answer on the top of your head and want to share that, you can. Or if you want to ask me, I can go first and then you can respond. So, ask your own question about entrepreneurship, beginning with who, what, where, when, why, or how.
Hmm. Well, who, I guess, would be a question or an answer. Who, it has to start with your why. Why do you want to do something? And then is it going to be beneficial to society, I'll call it. And I don't want that to sound tree huggery, but at the same time, if you're not solving a problem for people, like our market at CEO Zones, people always say, well, gee, if you opened it up to all revenue companies, you got something that's really cool. I had two of those calls today where people want to be involved, and no, we keep that sanctuary for that public company, that enterprise level. So back to that why and who. Um, it's not bigger isn't the answer ever. It's about what can we do for people and how will people respond and what can they do to reciprocate. And when you get something good, how do you give it back or how do you give it away and create something more? And that comes back to that book of Proverbs, I believe. But around generosity. And part of our makeup is some CEOs don't look for opportunities to be charitable or kind or giving or generous. They do it because the accountant says, hey, we've got this much money we can give away and we won't pay taxes on it and we won't lose taxes on it. And it's the number, right? Where what we try to say here is What are your personal values? What are your corporate values? And if there's a difference, one, you got a problem and you ought to go figure that out with your board. But two, once they're in alignment, what are the organizations or the ways you can give either to your people to be generous through or to your community or whatever it might be? But they got to come back to your personal values and your core values and what are you doing with it, right? And
Mhm.
usually starting at the lowest level of the highest level of need, the lowest level of fun is the right place to start. Uh, so that I guess I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
what rambled through me.
no. So what you're talking about here is what we kind of touched on near the beginning of the conversation, where you were stressing how important it is not to allow the tail of money to wag the dog,
Right,
because the why and the who and the how are far more important than the money.
right.
Um, and you reminded me of it was a sort of medium, well, small in your terms, small company in the northeast of England. And one of their values that they had was trust. And it came to their capital expenditure sign off for the year. And on it was an item which was to invest £1 million in clocking in and clocking out technology so that you knew who was on site where. And one of the directors said, "Hey, hold on a minute. What are we really doing? We say that one of our values is trust, and yet we're wanting to spend this money. Is that right?" And in the end, they chose not to, which, good for him to speak up in that way. But all too often, in my experience, the values are just stuck up on the wall and then everybody hopes for the best rather than consciously making choices explicitly in line with those values that you've articulated.
Unfortunately, that's uh, often true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I've still got ringing in my head you talking about how money is not the driver and how other things are far more important. And I think that's a good time to kind of bring a wrap to this values jam. And there's always one final question, and that is, what are you encouraged to do differently, to whatever degree, about entrepreneurship as a result of this conversation?
Well, I actually wrote something down while you
Did
were
you?
going there. Yeah. So when you mentioned film, I happen to have a, very large corporate friend. I'll put it that way, right? And they are nibbling at that industry. But if there would be a way to continue those resources and continue to drive that across more platforms of different types of films, um, and I don't want to use a brand name. I don't think it's appropriate, but
Sure.
there's a difference between a corporation who and we live on different sides of the ocean there, but different companies look at different ways of being good to their community, and we can all come up with what we think is straight ahead. This is right. This is the right thing to do. And I think as we look at film and investing in film gets back to that, what's your real purpose and what's out there 2 or 3 generations from that film? What's really is it teaching? And does it align with what you want to believe is right? And everybody's got a little bit differing degree of what's right, right? I get accused of because of living in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, I lean right. Well, that's past right for some people, right? That's a hard right. So but I choose to live here. We lived here 37 years and we moved here on purpose, right?
Yeah.
So even though I traveled around the world most of those weeks in between there, I came home to buggies going up and down the street and churches that are full on Sundays, not empty and not closed. So that different values to me might be something different in film, but it does need to start to teach and retrain, if you will, what the investor, the entrepreneur believes is their right. And that could be all over the map. I don't want to suggest something, but I think getting more involved in that would be an entrepreneurship way to help that. Just like our mutual friend Kevin Smith, right? In the film, his part of the film industry is what I think is right, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Well, we've talked about, why could there not be the kindies as well as the Grammies,
the Kindies, okay.
and this idea about an alliance in that sector
Hmm.
of companies that want to do good, setting the tone, and then almost embarrassing others to join them because obviously it's the right thing to do.
Right.
Um, and thank you for this conversation because it's really helped me because I've always believed this and I kind of included in my work, but I probably don't emphasize it enough, and that is getting CEOs and business leaders to remember why their organization exists.
Hmm.
Really, why does it really exist rather than the making money more than last year and all of that sort of stuff?
Right.
And then to let everybody know that's why you're here. Your employees and your customers and your service partners, your local communities, because that's what really engages people. And I talk about the successful organizations of tomorrow will be those that establish a sense of shared values with all stakeholder groups. But even though
Hmm.
I say that, I probably don't then go on about it enough. So,
Well, okay, fair enough. But that purpose, our individual purpose, if we're working somewhere where our individual purpose is not getting fed and stretched every day, you can't have the value of fun and achievement. It's just not going to be there. And here, that's our third corporate value is achievement and fun, right? And we're a digital sanctuary community that's global, but we still want to have achievement and fun. And we have to figure out creative ways to be that way. But that is one of our core values that if you're not having fun, like my wife says, you've invested all this money, when do we get some back? And I go, oh, but I'm having fun. And I am, right? Getting to talk to you today is fun to me, right?
yeah.
So, which is probably why she's not here today. She's out with her mother. Yeah.
And actually, that's a good note to, and we should finish. But you mentioning fun and entrepreneurship in the same breath, having lived within the constrictions of the corporate world, there is a real value in entrepreneurship having that freedom to
Mm.
a certain extent. Nobody's
Yeah.
saying that you're completely free, but
Right.
not to be beholden to those ridiculous processes that some corporate organizations somehow live with is one
Okay.
of the benefits of being an entrepreneur. So, Bill, you're now a qualified values jammer as well as all of the other things that you've
Wow.
done. And I thank you so much for your time and your wisdom, and I hope that you're going to continue enjoying yourself for a long time to come. No matter what your wife says, I hope she sees this.
Well, we'll have to make sure she accidentally bumps into it, right? We'll put it
Yeah.
in the feed. The replay will get emailed to her somehow. So, okay.
All right, Bill. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you, Alan. Take care.